And thank you for asking me to talk today. I didn't really know what I was going to talk about. And you know, there's so many things that you can talk about at these types of events, and I think a lot of the times when we have these sort of things, we can get wrapped up in the theory behind animal rights or talking about the politics and that sort of thing, which is important to do, but I think a lot of the time when activists come together, it's kind of a downer and a bit of a bummer to try and listen to the same thing over and over again. So I'm going to try and avoid doing that, and basically I just wanted to kind of just talk a little bit about some of the work that I've done with Toronto Pig Save, and in doing so just kind of bring up a few points that throughout my years of activism I've seen in the community, and I'm hoping that maybe this is a time for change. So I'm just going to tell a little story, and I just said I'm not going to be a downer, and this is totally going to be a downer, so but it'll be upbeat at the end, so we'll work our way there. So just a little bit quickly about me. I became vegetarian when I was 12 years old after seeing a PETA video, and whether or not you like PETA or not, we have to acknowledge that they've done some pretty incredible things over the years, and they changed me. And then when I was 18, I went to Brock University and I joined the Animal Rights Club that was on campus, and I got involved, and they had an Earthling screening, and I'm pretty sure everybody that has seen Earthlings here knows how impactful that movie is. And so from then on, I was vegan and became an animal rights activist. And since then, I've worked for a number of organizations. I've volunteered with organizations and rescues. And there's been a lot within the community that I think is important to touch on. When I got involved with Toronto Pig Save, it was just over a year ago. I'd been following their work for years. They've been around for about 5.5 years. And I had followed their stuff since their beginning. And I supported the work that they were doing, and they were doing really incredible things. But it was one of those things where bearing witness to me was not something that I thought that I could physically go and do. It wasn't something that I thought I could emotionally handle. And so I avoided going for a long period of time. And finally, one day I said, you know what, I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna see what it's like. And so I went to an all-day vigil, which they hold throughout the summer, once a month. And they're usually 15 to 16 hours straight from one slaughterhouse to the next. And so I went to the first one last July, and the first truck that pulled up, I approached the truck with, there was about 200 other activists there, and this was at a pig slaughterhouse in Burlington, Ontario. And we approached the truck, and we usually give them water because they're so dehydrated and hot from being in these trucks, being transported for so many hours. And so we offer water, sometimes watermelon and that sort of thing. And so we approached the truck, and everybody around me has water, and they're giving water to these pigs. And I made eye contact with a pig that was on the other side of the truck, and she was downed, so she couldn't get up. Her front legs had crippled under her. She was bloody, she was scratched. Probably the worst condition I've ever seen of an animal in my life. You know, I've worked with organizations, you can see this stuff on film, but until you really see it in person, it's a very different situation. And so she laid on the side of the truck, and I was talking to her, trying to get her to come over to me, and she struggled. She kept trying to get up, and she couldn't. And eventually, she actually dragged herself across the floor of the slaughter truck over to the side that we were at, and I was able to give her water, and I talked to her for a few minutes, and I gave her any sort of comfort that I could in that few minutes that I had with her. And that was probably one of the hardest things that I've ever done, specifically because you're helpless in that situation. And all you can try and do is give her some sort of comfort before she enters a slaughterhouse. And it was that minute that my life changed. And I had been an activist for a number of years, and I had been vegan for a number of years, and it was something that still completely changed my life. And so I'm a huge supporter of bearing witness, and I'm a huge supporter of going to slaughterhouses and really raising awareness that way. And so I'm telling this story for a few reasons, not to try and bum you out, I apologize for that, but one reason is she was someone. And to me, it's important that we have to acknowledge those individual lives, and we have to look them in the face, and we have to say, she mattered, her life mattered, and she was somebody that unfortunately we lost because of the industries that we support on a daily basis. And so I tell her story because to me she was important and her story needed to be told. Secondly, I tell it because I think it's important as activists to be open to different tactics. I think a lot of the times we get kind of set in our ways with activism, and that's okay. There's certain things that people are more comfortable doing, and that's totally fine. But I think, I was very much like, well, I'm a vegan already, I don't need to go and bear witness, it's not something that I need to do. And so I shut that out for a long period of time, and it took me a number of years, and then when I finally did it, it totally changed my life. So I think it's important to remember that there's different types of activism that we can get involved with. There's different types of education that we can get involved with. And I think it's important as activists that we try different things regularly, because what will reach me might not reach somebody else, but it could reach a different person. And so for the third reason that I tell this story is I think it's so important to have community. And within the AR movement, and I know within other social movements as well, there's always going to be division, there's always going to be conflict, and that's something that you can't really avoid. But I think it's important that we continue to try and build community rather than divide. Animal agriculture, specifically with lobby groups and government, they want us to divide, they want us to separate, they want to try and get as little support for this movement as they possibly can. And when we're fighting amongst each other about small things on this tactic is better than this, or I don't like what you're doing, we're wasting time. And we're wasting time that pig, like that down pig that I saw, didn't have. And that time that we wasted fighting amongst each other could have been used fighting for her instead. So I think it's important that we have to remember there's going to be differences, there's going to be things that I agree with that somebody else doesn't, and that's okay. And we can still come together and we can support one another and be a community and create change for animals. And I think a really good example of that, I'm sure most of you have heard of Anitas Krine's case right now that's going on. And I think that is a story of how powerful community can be. She was charged with criminal mischief for giving water to a pig last year in the summer. It was dying of dehydration and she gave it water and she was charged for it. She's now facing criminal charges and is facing jail time because of it. And when that case came out, that was one person in a small town in Ontario, and there has been international news coverage and there has been international support and protests and solidarity events over the year for her. And it has shown how one person doing something can really create change worldwide. And after that, the SAVE movement, which is now almost 60 groups across the world. We've got them in Europe, we've got them in the US, we have a number here. It's very important to look at that case and see how we can start really changing what's going on here by simply supporting one another. And people supported Anita, and now there's a huge movement going on worldwide where people are at slaughterhouses weekly raising awareness and being there for animals, giving them water, whatever it may be. And so I really just want to kind of hit home that we can appreciate differences, we can accept differences, but ultimately there's power in numbers. And if we come together and we really support one another, we can create change in this world. We can really do things that are going to change how things are going on for animals right now. But if we continue to divide and we continue to fight amongst ourselves, we're not going to get there. So we really need to just power through it, accept one another for our differences, and really support one another. Because to be honest, excuse my language, but the animals don't give a shit if we're fighting or what tactic I think is better or what tactic somebody else thinks is better. They just want us out there fighting for them. They don't care what we're doing. So if you want to do one thing and somebody wants to do something else, by all means. But we got to come together for them because they're the ones that we're fighting for. Thanks, guys. And thanks again for the awesome event.